So let's get into this. Before we get too far into here, just 5 seconds about us. We are a Microsoft Gold project and portfolio management partner, also a Silver collaboration and content partner. We help organizations out with our thought leadership approach that we're constantly presenting webinars like this one and presenting at PMI conferences and Microsoft conferences alike. We have a project management 365 approach, which takes a look at all the configurations and enhancements that the Microsoft 365 stack of solutions has to offer to really, push that needle in your PPM maturity within an organization. And then we also have this crawl, walk, run approach, which really helps organizations out at many different stages in their maturity. So depending on what your appetite for different capabilities and different solutions in this space, we offer a wide variety of services. And just to kind of flash what some of these services are, we provide process and training services and solution configurations and enhancements from the Microsoft PPM solution that we'll be talking about today. Reports and dashboards, you're going to see that reporting had a very significant role in the most current Forrester report, but we'll get to that later. Also, ongoing support also had some interesting play in this as well. So we've positioned ourselves to be able to help your organization out with many different areas, from managing after go live happens to providing integration solutions. And in the event that you can't get a hold of your Microsoft account manager and you would like to purchase any of the solutions, we'll go ahead and we can provide you licenses, because we're a Microsoft Cloud solution provider as well. So one thing that I just want to preface is that this information that's provided by Trusted IT Group during this webinar is for general information purposes only. I want to make it very clear that all this information in this presentation is provided in good faith. However, we make no representation or warrant of any kind express or implied regarding the accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, availability, or completeness of any information in this presentation. So this presentation that we're going to show you, it's based on the report that Microsoft commissioned Forrester Consulting to conduct a total economic impact, which they call the TEI, study and examine the potential return on investment, ROI, enterprises may realize by deploying Microsoft Project Online. The purpose of that study was to provide the readers with a framework so that they can evaluate the potential financial impact of adopting Project Online at their own organizations. So I think that that's going to be a very important thing to kind of keep in mind, because there's been a number of clients that Trusted IT Group has worked with that we've used this case study, this Forrester case study. This is now the second one, and we'll talk about the two of them, to provide a basis or a framework for them to prevail to do a business case for. So first, right, we need to talk about an ROI, right? Everyone wants to talk about an ROI, return on investment. If most likely, if you're looking at purchasing anything, the type of impact that an ROI can provide is going to allow you to get this purchasing decision, or maybe maybe your CFO or maybe your direct manager needs to fill out some sort of business case to have some sort of business justification on solution spend within an organization. And chances are that there's all sorts of business templates that that organizations need you to fill out. In fact, a number of our customers in the past, if a certain expenditure exceeded a certain dollar amount, a business case was required. And so for example, if it was expenditure of under $25,000, no business justification was almost necessary. It was almost as if you have the budget, you can go ahead and spend it. But what if you don't have the budget? What if it's something that is an unbudgeted spend that you think that the organization or your department or your team can greatly benefit from that? So, this magical number of ROI, this return on investment, is a pretty good way to kind of benchmark if the expenditure is good or not. Now, there's a lot of different types of, departments, if you will, within an organization, right? An ROI with hiring, a sales individual, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? The sales individual closes deals, they get certain dollar amounts revenue into the company. ROI is easier, an ROI for, say, someone on the accounting side of the world is maybe a little bit difficult to kind of come up with the ROI calculation, right? How do you calculate intangibles, right? If the person's not bringing in revenue, if there's no income coming in, how does an organization understand what the ROI is for that? Same thing with the marketing world. Marketers, it's very hard to calculate ROI from them. And similarly, when we talk to the project and portfolio management world, if your teams are not doing benefits management, it's extremely hard to categorize what is the spend. So for that, Forrester decided that they're going to go ahead and take a stab at it. And they came out with a pretty prescriptive way to calculate ROI. So one thing that I just wanted to I just wanted to cover ahead of time is some of the business cases that we've worked together with customers and what the elements of these business cases are. So obviously there's got to be an executive summary, right? There's got to be, here is what the business case is all about. Here is what we're trying to achieve. Here's what this type of spend is going to be able to provide to us. And, it's a very prescriptive, high level kind of, a couple paragraphs, maybe two paragraphs or a paragraph that kind of says this is what needs to happen. And if someone didn't read the rest of the business case or the business plan or anything like that, they would be able to know right from the executive summary what this is. So if you take a look at the Forrester case study, which I do recommend, if you haven't downloaded that, please go to our website, www.trusteditgroup.com/downloads, and you'll be able to find the two versions that we'll be talking about today. So after you have came up with an executive summary, obviously the next thing that we need to do is we need to state what the challenge and what the goals are, right? So what's the issues that we're facing? What type of business justification is this overcoming this challenge going to help us out with, right? How do we move forward with how do we push our business processes forward, and how do we show this ROI based on whatever challenges that we have? So then the next component is, let's define what the solution is to the challenge. So here's the challenge, here's the proposed solution, and then obviously there's going to be costs with the solution. And it's interesting that there's a ton of costs that you can think about when it comes to any type of solution. So I'm going to talk about some of the costs that Forrester is talking about, and the solutions and the challenges and the goals. But then the costs mean nothing if you can't describe what the benefits are. So the benefits section is actually, just as important as stating the solution and stating the challenge. So there needs to be a way that we can calculate what the benefits are. This is a very, mathematical way that we need to come up with the benefits calculation. But there is also some benefits that may also not be so easily calculated. And for that, those benefits also need to be put into there, because there's also tangible and intangible benefits as well. So we're going to cover all of these different things, and of course there's an execution timeline. And the execution timeline is pretty critical when you talk about ROI. There's going to be certain components of this Forrester framework that I want to highlight, because I do agree with them that there are certain factors, such as how long the implementations happen, what's the different rate of adoption. those kind of variables with the timeline really helps you calculate ROI, payback period, so on and so forth. So again, these are the elements of a business case. If you need help in developing a business case, please send us an email at info@trusteditgroup.com, and we'd be happy to work together with you on any of these elements of the business case, and put some numbers together. Okay, so we're going to start talking about the two different type of Forrester reports. I do plan on getting through this fairly quickly, just so I could, switch over to the actual Project Online solution, because I do want to highlight in the solution what some of the areas that Forrester was talking about, just to kind of give everyone, a visual representation of exactly what Forrester was talking about with regards to some of the benefits. Okay, so what I want to do is, the way I want to describe this is that Forrester had came out with two different total economic impact reports. The first one came out in 2016, and this is the screenshot that we're looking at over here. This was the first one that Microsoft commissioned, and this came out in 2016, that talked about the cost savings and business benefits enabled by Microsoft Project and Portfolio Management. And we did do a webinar about this, so we spent an entire hour talking about this particular business case. It's called Building a Business Case for Project Online. And if you go to YouTube or you go to our website, www.trusteditgroup.com/videos, you'll be able to see it there, or just go type in Trusted IT Group into YouTube and you'll see it right there. And we spoke for an hour about all the different components, but I think it's important for me to kind of revisit this and talk about some things that they did differently in the 2018 version. So in 2016, Forrester began to describe their approach. And again, I want to preface this webinar by saying that this is, you can kind of save time from reading this by just listening to this presentation, but we do recommend that you go ahead and you read this and you watch the other, YouTube videos that we have on this one. But basically, I want to explain how they came up with everything that I'm about to talk about. So there was this Forrester TEI approach that they did in 2016. And you're going to see that what they did was they performed their due diligence. What they did was they interviewed Microsoft. They interviewed Microsoft employees. They interviewed thousands of Microsoft project customers. And then they decided that the next step was, from everything that they just decided that they're gonna do their research in, they decided that they're going to select 4 customers, that they're going to take 4 major customers of Microsoft that are using Microsoft Project Online, and then they're going to go to their next step, step 3, which is designing their composite company. So they basically took averages, like average cost of projects, average hourly labor rates, and average number of projects, and average dollars spent for implementation, and so on and so forth from these 4 different companies, and they created what they call a composite company. And the composite company is a fictitious organization that had averages of these 4 customers that kind of met their criteria. And then step 4 was that they constructed a financial model. And the financial model is what I'm going to show you in the next couple slides. And what they did was, after that, they took their composite organization, they took their interviews, they constructed their financial model, and they wrote a case study. Okay, so something interesting that we should note is that back in 2016, some of the interviews revolved around what are the top priorities for introducing a PPM solution. And the 2016 case study was really focused around 2 major factors: that there was not a PPM solution in place, and an organization was using a bunch of on-premises server solutions for, all sorts of different things. So as you could see, some of the top priorities for introducing a PPM solution back then was improving operational efficiency, right? How can we push the needle in our business processes to provide more capabilities, to provide more efficiency? How can we improve resource management? How can we gain visibility into project performance? How can we optimize our CapEx and OpEx spending? And how can we improve project time to value? How can we, shorten the time length of our projects and actually get more project throughput? How can we improve business scaling is another important PPM solution. And then, of course, create better reporting. And those are the themes that was discussed back in 2016. Some other things to discuss is why organizations decided to select the PPM solution, Microsoft Project Online solution to be specific. And there was two huge outliers in here with both 40% and 44%. For 47% of organizations said that gaining visibility into project performance through better reporting was essential in their mind. That this is why they selected the PPM solution. And you're going to see that theme and that trend still stays. At the same time, and this is actually pretty big to consider, is that organizations are right now purchasing Office 365. There's this huge push to move to the cloud. Get off of our servers, move to the cloud. Let's go save money on servers. We don't have to manage servers anymore. Microsoft makes it really easy to just, scale up, scale down, purchase licenses, get rid of licenses, it's seats, right? You don't have to worry about, for those that are familiar with the server world, you don't have to deal with CALs, and infrastructure, patches, so on and so forth. So they made this investment into Office 365, and what they realize is, okay, well, let's leverage the existing tools that we already have with Microsoft Office 365. And this is where the PPM solution really took a strong priority in their grading system, if you want to call it that way, when they wanted to select a PPM solution. So getting on to the next section is I was describing this Composite Company that was built in 2016. Remember that they interviewed a whole bunch of organizations, then they scaled that down to 4 organizations, and then they combined those 4. So those 4 organizations, is a different triangle in this picture. So the top blue one basically talks about one of the organizations chosen was a multinational company with $3.5 billion in annual revenue. Another one was it had 500 Microsoft Office 365 PPM users with 100 project managers. Okay, so it's an average size. It's not that large of a Microsoft PPM use base. Some of our customers have over 2,000 users. Some have over 8,000 users. Some have as little as 20 users. Everyone has different needs, and not everyone needs to use the solution. But I think that 500 PPM users is about an average take over here. But they also have 5,000 employees in the organization. So again, not everyone has access to the PPM solution. Not everyone needs it, right? If you're in marketing, you may need to manage projects, but you may not need to have the full, schedule robustness of Microsoft Project. Someone in the finance department definitely doesn't need to use Microsoft Project unless, of course, they want to manage certain projects within the accounting side, but that's not where they're going to do their day-to-day. The other triangle says that they have that this organization manages 300 projects per year at an average cost of $150,000 per project. So actually, let me just correct myself when I'm reading this. What this is saying is that this is the composite organization. These are the averages, what they decided that they're going to pull from all 4 of these different organizations. Okay, so we'll spend a couple minutes on here, and we'll talk about what was the ROI, the benefits versus the costs that Forrester decided to make as one of their key points in their 2016 report. And the first the first benefit was reduced project budget overruns. So let me explain what that means for just a second. So reduced project budget overruns is, if we understand our resource management, if we understand our project visibility, if we can see everything that we need to see with regards to risks and issues and status reporting and aggregated costs and so on and so forth, we can actually keep our projects coming in under budget as opposed to over budget. And that could be a direct benefit by not charging extra money to the business, right? Because there's all these different projects. If it goes over budget, it's going to cost you more money than you originally planned for. Someone's got to cough that up. The next component was increased PM performance. So this was something that was, important back in 2016, and I'm telling you right now that in 2018, nothing has changed, because the important fact is that automation and the speed of business is happening faster and faster and faster, and people need things done immediately. Nobody wants to wait for things to happen. So ultimately, what was happening back in 2016 is that we have all these different tools, we have these different PPM solutions, but we need to build these reports. And how can we build these reports quicker than how we're doing it right now? And this is a major pain point. So by adding this Microsoft PPM solution, you can increase your PM performance by not spending time building reports. Was the major driver of this benefit. So there was a certain amount of hours every week that PMs were building reports for the executive teams or for their project teams, and this was happening on a weekly basis. There was hours being spent, but by introducing the PPM solution with all these OData connections and Power BI connections and Excel reporting and all these other reporting solutions like connecting it to as many other Tableau servers as you can think of. There's a million different ways that you can provide the reporting. You're able to save that time, these hours of building report, by actually just automating the report. And look, we don't need to build the report anymore. Now we can just go and work and get our projects completed, which also helps keeping the project within budget. Moving down to the lower right-hand quadrant. So this is the infrastructure cost avoidance. And this is interesting because there's still organizations that depend on servers. But if you were to take a look at the costs of avoiding infrastructure costs, you would be able to save money really from day one. You don't need to have someone manage the servers. You don't need to spend time shutting it down and running patches. You don't need to purchase the new version and upgrading and migrating and doing all that, because Project Online gives you the brand new version of the solution as soon as it's rolled out. The next one is improved resource management benefit. And I'm going to show you this because this is still the same in 2018. So by having the central repository for your enterprise resources, and for those that may not be familiar with enterprise resources are, people, for example, that you put into your resource pool that are, tied in, could be to your Active Directory, right, with Microsoft Office. Microsoft Office 365 with the Active Directory, right? It fills up the resource pool. But because everyone is in this central repository, you could see who's associated to which project, who's available. You can filter by skill set, you can filter by roles, you can really easily do all sorts of project planning at the project level. You could just allocate resources at the project level, or you can, allocate resources at the task level. Excuse me. So by having the central repository, you can now have this improved resource management. When Forrester was talking about the costs, what they were talking about with regard to the cost is licensing cost, right? Obviously, licensing is something that needs to be factored. That's pretty clear cut. Then there was cost of implementation. And this is another interesting tidbit, is that back in 2016, when we talked about the cost of implementation, I'm just running off the top of my head, but I believe that the average cost of implementation was like $500,000. It ran for about 8 months. Since 2016 to right now, especially with Trusted IT Group, if you recall back on the first slide, and this is a very important fact that we said that we do this crawl, walk, run approach, because not every organization wants to build a PPM solution for 8 months. Maybe the business wants to be able to run on the lean methodology approach and say, look, let's spend less than $500,000 and let's get it up and running before 8 months. Maybe let's spend, let's say, under 100K. Let's spend a fifth of that, and let's kind of work at it for about a month, and then we could build in additional costs year after year, or maybe get some kind of ongoing type of managed services type of an approach, so that as business requirements we can make configurations and changes later. And hey, that'll probably be a good idea, because whatever we know, we don't really know, because we just think that we know, but we need to actually start running with the solution and making changes down the road. So this cost of implementation has definitely changed depending on which vendor you're talking to or which partner you decide to do it with. Not everyone needs to go for 8 months. Not everyone needs to be 500K. Some could be higher, some could be lower. There's also an internal training cost. So something when we're making our ROI calculations that Forrester pointed out, which I think is a really valuable one. When we're coming up with our business case, there's typically only discussions on cost for vendors or consultants or contractors. But what about the cost of having your PM team not work on projects and sit in all-day classes and all-day trainings and pulling, resource managers and executives for report training and things like that? So those are all costs that are calculated in this 2016 model. And then also there's this change management cost as well. So what I want to do here, just show you just a quick little screenshot of, so here's these key facts that Forrester said back in 2016. So they said by implementing Project Online, this composite organization was able to realize an ROI of 301%. There's a net present value per user of $12,546. Typically, you're going to see a payback in around 6 months, and the total benefits realized versus the costs is $8,359,959. So to kind of help you understand what this looks like, if anyone has downloaded this from our website, you can go to www.trusteditgroup.com/downloads again, and we have this ROI calculator. If it's not there, feel free to send an email to info@trusteditgroup.com. What we did was we basically reverse engineered this entire Forrester report into this Excel spreadsheet that you can use for free. We don't charge anything for this. We just want to help you understand these different costs. And there's, if you take a look in the lower left-hand corner of the screenshot, you see that there's assumptions. And these are the assumptions that Forrester said as part of their composite organization. When you open up this tab and you change some of the numbers, all of these costs and benefits are going to change as per your organization's assumptions. So I do ask you to play around with this. Nothing is locked, so you can see what the formulas are. You can play with it on your own. So there's also a tab over here for total benefits, and then there's subsequent tabs on reduce project budget overruns, increased PM performance, improved resource management, infrastructure cost avoidance, licensing costs, cost of implementation, and two of the other ones that we just mentioned. So what you could do is take some time, go into these tabs, do it on a one-by-one basis, and you'll be able to come up with your own total benefits to justify the purchase of this Project Online solution. So this was done back in 2016. Now in 2018, a very similar, the total economic impact of Microsoft Project Online was just launched. And the Forrester approach was the exact same way, right? So they performed their due diligence. This time, they instead of instead of interviewing, say, thousands and thousands of customers and then choosing 4 from there, they just went straight to the source and then just went straight to those 4 customer interviews. They still designed their composite organization. They constructed their financial model, which is a little bit different than the one from 2016. And then they wrote a case study. So let's talk about some of the key challenges that was described in 2018. So there was 3 major challenges that was discussed in 2018. The first one was inefficient project management processes. So we could see that there's still this, process gaps, that there's still a need to tighten up the belt with regards to processes. There's also a lack of visibility into the project performance. And there was also an immature project management practice limited the ability to grow with the organization. So this sounds to me like the organizations that they reached out were very immature with regards to their PMO processes, and part of how these organizations were selected is that they had to have the criteria that prior to implementing Project Online, they had to have an assortment of tools like spreadsheets and reporting from somewhere else, and maybe some infrastructure over here, and they had project plans on their local hard drives, and then they had their risk logs on local hard drives, and nothing was being shared, right? It's just immature project management practices, so it was hard to scale out. It was costing a lot of time and money. So the solution requirements in 2018 was that, number 1, it had to work out of the box and not require a lot of customization. This is what the customers said when they were making their PPM solution requirements 2018, right? They want to make it easy. Let us run with something easy that we don't need to put in a lot of code, a lot of a lot of developer work, right? We need to be able to configure what's out of the box. It needs to operate in the cloud, as to not have this additional infrastructure and maintenance, kind of like what I was telling you before with the infrastructure cost avoidance, right? I think that back in 2016, right, because that was 2 years ago, a lot has happened in the past 2 years with regard to cloud technology and IoT and some of the other hot buzzwords. There's this connected enterprise kind of flavor that everyone wants to feel, and getting rid of this infrastructure is a part of this movement to the cloud, right? Everyone's hearing about the digital revolution and the digital transformation and digital business transformation. So this is all part of it, and I think that organizations are now saying that, look, back in 2016 we were a little skeptical about the cloud. We know that it's good. We see a lot of movement there, but we're still, we still need to figure it out. Right now in 2018, this is like a requirement. It needs to happen in the cloud. And then, of course, the last one is that we need to provide consistency in reporting and project management practices across teams, departments, and locations. And what I mean by consistency in reporting is that we need to have standardization and governance around how things are done, so that if you have a global team, right, if you have a team that's, if you have some team members in the US and some team members in, somewhere in Asia Pacific, and you have another team somewhere in South America, and you have another team in Europe, right, people could fill in different things. And how do you report on when data is not consistent? So Project Online gives you this opportunity to have standardization with drop-down tables and pick lists and all sorts of things that are can help in the automation and the consistency. Because when you have consistent data, the reporting becomes a little easier. So what was interesting is that this Forrester report decided to take a different approach on how they talked about what the customer actually did. So what the customer did was that these 4 different customers had a very similar PPM solution journey in 2018. The first is that they started out with the POC. Interestingly enough, they said that the POC cost was around, say, $10,000, and it was a pretty quick engagement, right? Up and running, 10K, you got a POC. A POC doesn't necessarily need to be in your production environment, right? It could be in a free trial. So just to give you an idea, if you send us an email, we can set you up with a 90-day free trial where you can configure it, you can run it out, you can have us configure it. If you decide to keep it, we can attach it to your your production environment. Or if you decide that this is not the right fit, you're always free to scratch it. But what happens after the POC is the POC is supposed to validate some business functions, what's going on, what the benefits are supposed to be. Then there was a 12-month rollout, which for this size organization, I could say the 12-month is about the norm. It could be a lot shorter, it could also be a lot longer depending on what the rollout scope looks like. But there was a 12-month rollout moving from the POC over to the production environment. Some decided to go to pilot, some decided to go straight to the production. And then afterwards, there was a solution training. Let's talk about the Composite Company in 2018. They're saying that the average organization, what it would look like from the 4 that they interviewed, was that there was a mid-sized manufacturing company operating in 10 locations within the US and the UK, that it had annual revenues are approximately 500 million with cost of goods sold equating to 40% of revenue or 200 million per year. That the organizations were utilizing spreadsheets and word processing documents to manage projects and no team collaboration was happening. So just imagine, right? Everyone was working on the same things in different locations. And then, of course, that there was a lack in visibility into project performance. And they were unable to make effective planning decisions due to the lack of project information. So what's interesting is that back in 2016, there was 4 benefits over 4 costs. This time in 2018, they decided to focus on 2 major benefits and 2 major costs. The 2 major benefits were reporting efficiencies gained and improved resource utilization. So again, you could see the trend in 2016 and 2018 that there's still this major pain point on reporting on resource utilization, reporting on project visibility, just reporting in general. Then there was costs. So the cost that they decided to calculate this time was proof of concept and implementation and ongoing subscription fees and professional services. There was 2 benefits that was not included in the ROI calculation, and the first one was procurement savings, and the second one was flexibility. So, again, that each of these was unique to each customer. So just to talk about some of the benefits gained in 2018 was reporting efficiencies gained. Organizations were able to report automation, right? They're able to have these reports generated in an automated fashion. They're able to consolidate their reports. The time that was saved was 15 hours per month. Originally, now they're only spending 3 hours per month on building these reports and consolidating it. And resource reporting was reduced by 60%. Improved resource utilization, the benefit was improvement in resource utilization. And then there was procurement savings. And what was interesting to talk about the procurement savings was that organizations now had the ability to analyze and predict demand and supplies. For a manufacturing organization, now remember, this composite organization was a manufacturing organization. They received better information on their immediate and future parts needed. Because you have all this visibility, good project planning, you were able to understand, you're able to predict in the future what kind of parts you need. So for procurement, this information allowed them to negotiate better prices with suppliers and reduce their overall parts cost by 2.5%. And we all know that procurement's major job is to save money for the company. And then also flexibility, which I think was pretty interesting to note, even though that it was unique to each organization. Portfolio management and the ability to prioritize and plan annual investments was also some of the benefits that was gained. And the integration of Power BI and other systems for reporting. So having some of these flexible APIs to connect, ticketing systems like ServiceNow to Project Online, we've seen and done, and being able to integrate agile solutions into Project Online that we've seen and done, and ERP solutions that we've seen and done into Project Online. This allows you to have better reporting in this, kind of connected state, if you will. So some of the costs was the proof of concept, POC, and implementation. So Forrester quoted, to implement Project Online, a third-party professional service or Microsoft partner, like Trusted IT, was hired to oversee the implementation and the change management process. So you can imagine what some of the fees are. And ongoing subscription fees and professional services. So first there was an ongoing subscription fee for Project Online. The majority of organizations, according to Forrester, had an internal resource dedicated to support the environment. In our world, we would consider that a project server or Project Online admin. And then additional third-party services to help with ongoing configuration, as well as enabling additional capabilities and use cases. So what that would mean is, for example, an organization would purchase the Trusted IT Group Managed Services, so that we can give you unlimited support, ongoing configuration, unlimited help, and being able to provide quarterly trainings and quarterly assessments. That's something that organizations would, purchase, and that would be part of the costs. So here's just telling you some of the ROI by Forrester in 2018 is that there was total benefits for the reporting efficiency gained. At the total of the end of the third year, be able to see $978,000 in reporting efficiency gained, the benefits, and the improved resource utilization was around $4.2 million, giving you the total benefits adjusted at 10% risk at $5.2 million. So what I want to do for the remainder of the time is I'm just going to go ahead and flash some of the reporting and the resource management capabilities that we have over here. So let's see. So for example, if we wanted to see some of the reporting capabilities, I'm just going to go high level over here. Is we could go and click on our Project Center. And this is Project Online. And the Project Center gives you the full visibility into whatever you have access to, of course, but since I'm the admin, you see we've embedded a Power BI report right in here. So this is actually good that we've embedded this in here, so I don't have to go show you the reporting capabilities. But for example, if you wanted to log in and see the portfolio summary report, you could see the timeline of all the different projects happening. You'd be able to get a running total of all the hours being spent within the PMO. You'd be able to see project name, percent to complete, cost variance, etc. You'd be able to filter, let's say, by project type. So if I wanted to see, all the marketing projects in the organization, everything is click through enabled. We want to take a look at some of the other projects, like large projects, ERP upgrades. Or maybe you just wanted to see specific project data. So you wanted to see, what projects are in your finance portfolio, Which projects are in your IT portfolio? Okay. Some of the other resource management capabilities would be if I were to go into the resource center. So the resource center over here is your central repository for all the resources. And you can see that we've grouped all the resources by skill sets. So if you wanted to see who your developers were, you'd be able to see that in one quick view, and who your IT architects are. What's even more interesting is that if you wanted to take a look at, you see I have Glenn selected over here and I have Jim selected over here. If I wanted to take a look at their capacity planning, if I wanted to see if they're available or not, you can see that we can have this bar chart showing you that we have our resource remaining availability. So it looks like all these resources are available. I want to put them onto a project. And you see that they drop down on these 2 days because they're Saturday and Sunday. Of course, that this takes into account for the resource calendar, which is configured. You can also scroll down and you could see if they were to be selected to a particular project. You'd be able to see their project assignments, resource assignments, at this particular tabular view down here. So these are just some of the views and some of the modules that helps out with regards to resource availability, resource efficiency, reporting. Let me actually go back to the project center and let me click on, let's see, we can click different types of reports. So I'll click on the Trusted IT Group reports. And I'll also click on the Microsoft Project Reports. So here's a Power BI report that we give free of charge to any customer that's enrolled into the managed services. It's a series of 11 reports. So for example, this takes all the information connected to your Project Online environment and all of your project SharePoint sites that's associated to projects, and allows you to report on it. So for example, you have your last published report. You'd be able to have your health check report diving into specific projects and seeing where there's some gaps or faults with that. You also have your resource utilization report. Resource utilization report based on engagements. Resource utilization report for the last 30 and next 90 days. You could take a look at the whole entire resource pool without even diving into Project Online. So you could see your timesheet report. You could see who's logging in time and who's not. Project timeline report. And of course a project status report. And last one is a portfolio risk and issues report. So at the same time, Microsoft also released a number of free reports, free Power BI reports that you're free to download and connect it at any time you want. So there's a portfolio dashboard that shows you project count, project cost, cost variant, project work, etc. Counts all the risks and issues in the environment. You also get a project timeline showing you project start dates, almost like a project roadmap, if you want to call it that way. There's also this cost report. You'd also be able to see a milestone report that you could filter by the project type. So if you just require a milestone report, this would be a good one for you. Here's your risk report. There's also an issue report. You also get the opportunity to have this demand and capacity report, giving you all sorts of heat maps, and you could drill down into specific individuals and see where some of these problems are. Resource overview report. See, there's a lot of reports that Microsoft provides to you at no additional cost, and you can download all these reports and kind of modify them because these are all template packs. In Power BI, when you download a template pack, it allows you to kind of configure it on your own, so you're not stuck to just this colors, these data points, etc. You can change the visuals, change the colors, change the data points. You can do all sorts of things with it. You can see your resource details, be able to see your demand forecast. Of course, there's a project status report over here. And the last one is the risk and issue report. So, thank you. We appreciate you coming in and spending some time to learn about the ROI in Project Online in the way that Microsoft and Forrester put together the case study. And we appreciate your time again.